You can make a difference in someone's life, including your own, with a job in home care. These jobs offer flexible schedules, healthcare, retirement options, and free training. They also provide paid time off and opportunities for overtime. Visit OregonHomeCareJobs.com to learn more and apply. That's OregonHomeCareJobs.com.
Each summer, Kenai Redfish Company travels to Alaska's Cook Inlet to sustainably fish wild salmon and then brings it back home to share with our community. Family-owned and based in Northeast Portland, Kenai Red Salmon Shares offers households the opportunity to pre-order a portion of their premium flash-frozen salmon to enjoy all year round. I know you've heard of farm to table. This is boat to table. Visit KenaiRed.com to place your order. That's KenaiRed.com. And be sure to use promo code CityCast15 to get $15 off.
Today on CityCast Portland, we're talking about the controversy surrounding the possible name for Portland's new WNBA team. And we're breaking down the state's new plan to pay for wildfire prevention as fire season gets kicked off early. Plus, we're digging into our listener mailbag. Joining me for this midweek news roundup is our very own senior producer, Giulia Fiaoni. Oh, and after the conversation, Stacey Hoshimiya will be joining our host, Claudia Meza, for a conversation sponsored by Portland State University about Invent Oregon's upcoming competition. It's Wednesday, June 25th. I'm executive producer John Notarianni in for Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Welcome, everyone, to the midweek microdose of news. Giulia, thanks for joining me this morning. How you doing?
Good. Good morning, John.
Today's a day for us to sort of catch up on some of the news that you might have missed over the past week or so. But before we get into it, I wanted to sort of throw out a big save the date for this coming Sunday. Because, Giulia, we're doing one of our favorite things of the year.
Yeah, we are.
We're going to Sunday Parkways in Cully. You've done this a couple times with us.
Oh, yeah. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
This is one of those times where you get to come and hang out with us in person. So if you can come, John's going to give you the info right now. So listen up.
Yeah. We're going to have a booth in Cully at Fernhill Park happening this Sunday, 11 to 4 o'clock. I'll be there. Giulia will be there. Claudia's going to be there. It's going to be fun.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be a party. Dare I say it?
Yeah. Well, let's just go ahead and get into it. Giulia, you've got a story. Our long-awaited WNBA team, it looks like they finally have a name, and everyone's really happy about it, right?
Finally, maybe, and also definitely not, is what I have to say.
Okay.
So I'm talking about some reporting from Oregonian sports columnist Bill Oram and Sean Hyken from the Rose Garden Report. And they're talking about how Portland's soon-to-be-launched WNBA expansion team will be announcing its official name sometime later this summer, but that some recent U.S. patent and trademark applications may have revealed what RAJ Sports and sibling owners Lisa Bethal-Mirage and Alex Bethal have landed on early, so kind of a leak. So basically last week, the WNBA League office filed 4 trademark applications related to the old Portland WNBA team from 2000, which only lasted a couple years, and they were called the Portland Fire. Mm-hmm. So local sports reporters are thinking the Portland Fire name may be resurrected for our incoming WNBA team. And columnist Bill Oram, alongside some dedicated fans, are not so happy about it, calling the idea lazy and tone-deaf for a few reasons, which I'm going to rattle off for you right now. So first one's kind of obvious, in my opinion. Since 2000, I feel like generally the threat of deadly fires in Oregon have changed a lot and just grown immensely. For example, right now, we're basically in the middle of a bit of fire anxiety related to the incoming fire season because we've had such a notably dry year. And on top of that, the idea of Portland burning gives a lot of people flashbacks to 2020 when national reporters and politicians were collectively, and I guess still are, shitting on our city for our complex housing, addiction, and mental health needs coming out of COVID. And then a few others, which I thought were interesting points made by Bill, were one of those being it illustrates that the women's team is just like an add-on to the men's team because of the similar themes and that they aren't their own thing, which I think is a really interesting point. And then the last one being the unmet promise from the Bethal family made in an interview with Bill, stating that they were going to get community input in order to come up with this name, which according to Bill, that has not happened at all.
Oh my gosh.
I think generally the frustration is just that these owners are California-based and the executives are from New York. So generally that sense of them being out of touch on how to represent Portland is becoming pretty apparent, or at least it could be if this comes true, which is frustrating. But before I continue and talk about some alternative name ideas, John, how did this hit you?
I mean, it was just sort of, there's been so much anticipation about this team and so much speculation about the name itself. I feel like for months, if not years at this point, we've been like, what's the name going to be? What's the name going to be? And for it to just sort of go back and be like, and we're probably just going to go with Fire, the name that we had last time, is really disappointing. I mean, I guess we can say they haven't actually come out and confirmed this. This is sort of like putting together the pieces, but it feels pretty clear that this is the direction that we're going. And I thought it was funny. I went back and looked at some old reporting that Bill had done from last year when he was sort of musing on ideas of what the names could be. And he said a couple things. Pathfinders comes to mind, but the WNBA has outgrown naming teams as a play on their male counterparts, is what he said. He was like, they're not going to go ahead and do that dumb thing again. And lo and behold, here we go. We're right back in it again.
I'll give you some names too, John, that were collected by Orem, by some fans that thought that they could do it better. I'm going to list them off to you right now. The Explorers, the Majestics, the Riptide, the Black Crows, the Dragons, the Thundercats, the Steelhead, the Pioneers, the Swifts, which I love, the Hotshots, and the Wings. Some of these may not entirely work for legal reasons, but just to give you a sense of the creativity there. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think our very own host, Claudia Meza, talked about her idea a few months ago on the show, which was the Bad Bridges, which I still think has a lot of potential.
I love the Bad Bridges as an idea. Yeah, that was when we had Jenny Nguyen from the Sports Bra on the show. And Jenny, who, like, if anybody deserves to have a weigh-in on what the team name should be, like, Jenny Nguyen single-handedly, as the owner of the Sports Bra, has done more for, like, the WNBA hopes in Portland than anyone. And Jenny's idea was the Portland Trident, which is sort of going off of the Portlandia statue, which, like, yeah, I think that could work really well, too.
Yeah. And so I will say not everyone hates the Portland Fire name, which was surprising for me to hear. But Orem reported that some people saw it as an opportunity to reclaim the post-2020 meaning of Portland burning, and that it means something different from the original team's fans, and that it would be different calling them Portland Fire versus, say, calling them Portland Wildfire, which they've got a point there.
Yeah, I mean, at least they didn't name them Portland Devastating Earthquake, you know?
Exactly.
It's like, I guess, but I don't know that I entirely buy that either.
I feel like, too, I was really thinking about this a lot after I read this article, and it also reminds me of, like, the Gen Z approach of calling things fire. Like, in that case, it really works. They got a point there, which I feel like that was the deciding point. They were like, oh, they're fire. That's so fire. I could just see them in the writing room submitting those trademark applications, getting all excited about it, and thinking about it being like a trend that catches on, which feels just kind of sad. But anyway, before I wrap up, I did want to mention that Orem highlighted the perspective of the owners, saying that, like, it is really hard to come up with a name that, like, first of all, doesn't offend everyone and is something that's legal to use, and that these folks are not like villains trying to come in and do something bad for Portland. They really do have our best interests in mind, keeping in mind that these are the same people that decided to take over the Thorns at a crucial point recently. So they are putting their money where their mouth is.
And is the family that has been tossed around as the potential owner of the Trailblazers, which are up for sale too. So, yeah.
And I feel like that's something that's been spoken about really positively compared to, like, what could potentially be Jeff Bezos, you know?
Yeah.
They're not the villainous rich people that we could see being the other potential owners. But the thing that I love the most that Orem pointed out is he really emphasized like why it's important to even care about a name of a sports team and what it means. And this is something that I hadn't really thought about as someone who doesn't really regularly watch sports, isn't really a huge fan of basketball. And I want to read this quote to you to really capture that. So he said, "I view a sports brand as a postcard from a specific place. It's a symbol that you are proud to have associated with your state, one that is meaningful and sends a message to the rest of the world of who you are and what you're about." Which that's like so sweet, first of all. Also, so true. And if you think about it on the flip side, and you picture a bunch of people gathering to go to a game at the Moda Center when it's smoky outside and they're wearing Portland Fire merch, it's just not a good look. It's not a good representation of like the level of awareness Portlanders have about their city, their state, and how much they deeply care about things that devastatingly affect people.
Yeah.
And it forces people into a position of looking kind of tone deaf because the people at the front are setting that tone.
Yeah.
So
totally. Well, thank you for walking us through all of that, Giulia. And on that note, I guess to sort of underscore it a bit, let's take a quick break. And then I want to get into where we're at with fire season because,
there we go.
Still looking for summer activities that get your kids out of the house, but also provide enrichment and personal growth? Well, you're in luck. Northwest Children's Theater award-winning summer camps still have spaces open for ages 4 through 14. Both half-day and full-day camps take place in Northeast, Southeast, and downtown Portland now through August 22nd, and you can choose from more than 30 exciting camp titles including Bluey's Big Adventure, Mario's Super Party, The Legend of Percy Jackson, Mary Poppins, and so much more. Northwest Children's Theater summer camps are the perfect opportunity for a budding theater kid to enhance their performance skills and also make new friends. View the full schedule and register at nwcts.org. That's nwcts.org. Time slows down in Walla Walla, Washington. And that's the point. You can experience a vibrant and relaxing getaway, going at your own pace, doing as much or as little as you want. And if you love to eat delicious food and drink good wine, this is your destination. Walla Walla Valley produces everything from wheat to asparagus to strawberries to, of course, their famous Walla Walla sweet onions. So there's plenty of farm-fresh, fine dining from celebrated chefs to explore. But it's also home to more than 130 wineries offering a variety of expressions and vineyard experiences. And all of this is just a beautiful and scenic 4-hour drive from Portland. Go to wallawalla.org to plan your visit today. That's wallawalla.org.
All right, so I spent some time looking into just what's going on with fire season. And, last year we had the biggest fire season that the state had ever seen.
Yeah.
And we're not in great shape this year either. Already, there's been more than 20,000 acres that have burned, 56 homes have been destroyed, and that is way ahead of where we normally are at this point in June. Of course, the largest fire so far is that Rowena fire in the Gorge, has burned about 3,700 acres, although that one is 99% contained, thankfully.
Mm-hmm.
So wildfire season is already off to a big start, and it's looking like we're going to be above normal risk for wildfire all summer long. Now, Giulia, you might remember, back in the winter, we were like, we have had so much precipitation. There's been so much snow. We're going to be in great shape this year for wildfire season. Thank God.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that did not pan out at all. Even though we had so much snow and rain this winter, April, May, and June have been really warm and dry, which basically just meant that there was a ton of fuel that has grown out there and it dried out really quick.
I was thinking about that a lot this weekend, John, because we had that crazy rainstorm for all day on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me feel like, oh, this is great. We're just going to kind of tamper down some of those fire issues we're having. And it's just not that, because you have a really rainy day next to a really sunny day and everything just blooms. And it's just fuel for everything to just in a very explosive way burn, which is terrifying.
Yeah, well, I mean, this weekend, I was actually down in Phoenix, Oregon, which
Oh.
you might remember. Phoenix is one of the towns that burned in the Alameda Drive fire back in 2020. And I was
Yeah.
driving around with some guys who live there, and they were just like pointing out, like, that building is completely gone. That building was completely gone. Like, literally, we were driving through the town, and they were showing me where the fire had been, and how much of it had been destroyed. And it was just really, really heartbreaking. So, yeah, I mean, it's just something that we really need to take seriously.
Hmm.
And local officials are taking it seriously, too. I don't know if you saw this, but the Portland Fire Marshal has already declared a burn ban in the city through the summer. So this just dropped on Monday.
Yeah.
So like things like recreational campfires, fire pits, yard debris burning, like all of that is off limits at this point throughout the rest of the summer. And that's I mean, it's a pretty normal thing for like the city to declare that at some point, but it's pretty
Yeah.
rare that it happens this early in the year.
It is really early. And I think it makes sense. Like the Ravenna fire was human caused. And
Mhm.
it's pretty common for that to be the case. Not saying that it was intentional, but like there are so many things that can happen when people are out exploring in the wilderness and also just in their backyards. That ash can kind of just blow and carry over into areas in a way where it's hard to predict just how dangerous it can be.
Yeah, when people are being dumbasses, you mean. Right? I mean,
In one way, yes.
well, I strongly believe that most wildfires are caused by somebody who, like, if they were to step back, would be like, yeah, that probably wasn't a good idea.
Yeah.
You know?
Sure. I think ultimately it's a lack of perspective and self-awareness and consideration for the environment you're in
Yeah.
and like not paying attention to burn bans that are very serious and have consequences.
Yeah, well, I mean, the last thing I want to touch on here is just what's happening about all this at a state level. Because, you'll
Mhm.
remember there was this big effort to pass more funding for wildfire prevention and mitigation because last year it was so freaking expensive that they had to go back into a special session just to allocate more money for everything that burned in 2024.
Yeah.
So there was a big push this year. We need to get more money, plus doubled by the fact that with the Trump administration, there's certain grants that have been held up that
Mhm.
local counties are relying on for disaster response. So this week, they finally figured it out. And I know you know this. The thing that they settled on to pay for wildfire mitigation is a new tax on nicotine pouches like Zyn.
Oh no. Poor Zin boys.
A new tax on Zyn has passed the House. I mean, it still needs to get through the Senate. It's passed the House.
Yeah.
They're hoping it's going to raise $14 million over the next 2 years. So
It's kind of hilarious, but also it makes a lot of sense.
for all the Gen Zers out there sucking on their nicotine pouches, like, congratulations, you are now working to prevent forest fires.
I have so many friends that I'm just like, ooh, I'm just going to poke fun at you because there's just like a really silly culture around Zen. But it's pretty clever of our legislators to look to that as a funding source because, first of all, I mean, it's awful for you.
Yeah.
And like it is a really popular thing right now, like in this moment in history. But the thing that I think is really fabulous about this bill that you're talking about, John, is that they're also focusing on retrofitting properties in areas that are prone to fires to make them more fire safe, which I think is like really the direction that we need to be moving in because I think we're just going to continue to chase our tail when it comes to having the money to be able to protect people from these fires because it's not looking like it's going to get any better year over year. And we're already at a point where a lot of the funding that we did allocate for survivors of the 2020 fires that you mentioned, we're having a hard time even getting it out to folks to fund things like housing. There are still people that are homeless from that disaster. And like figuring out a way to get new funding for what we're heading into and spend that old funding to make sure people are taken care of is a really tough sticking point for legislators right now.
And Zyn, it's better than smoking a cigarette. It's not going to start a wildfire. Nobody spits out their little Zyn pack and starts a fire like you could with a cigarette
You've got
butt.
a
So
really good point there.
it's a win-win.
I feel like I can see like a Smokey the Bear like drawn up animation doing Zyn and have it be a full on campaign.
All right. Well, let's pivot. Let's get into the mailbag. We've gotten to the point where we're starting to have mailbag responses to previous mailbag episodes.
It's mailbagception.
And this first one came from the last mailbag that we did, which was an episode that you and Claudia were on.
Yeah, this was a recent midweek roundup where we had some mailbag from listeners. This one was from June 11th specifically, and the topic was focaccia. And listener Brian from Montevilla wrote in and said, "Hey squad, I have a message for listener Charlie. I think Sebastiano's, formerly of Montevilla, now in Selwood, makes the best focaccia in town. They have some traditional styles plus some funky stuffed focaccias that change week to week. Ooh. Last I checked, they even use it for some of the sandwiches, which I am strongly in support of. When I make focaccia myself, I do a thing where I'll like cut the bread in half and flip the outside inside and stuff it with prosciutto and mozzarella and arugula. And it's my favorite thing to do in the summer months when it's easier to make dough.
This is with your homemade focaccia
My
that you
homemade
had made from your
focaccia.
family recipe, which we are all still jealous that you haven't shared with us, Giulia. But
That is true.
I will definitely co-sign Sebastiano's. That place is awesome, and I love it.
Oh, yay.
Yeah. Well, I've got one from Will H., who reached out about our recent episode of just how to get your kids outside. Will had another recommendation of something to do with young kids. Take them to Rainbow Trout Farms. Will says, no license needed. They can provide the poles and tackle, and they will clean your fish if you like.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, doesn't that sound cute? Taking your kids, taking them
Yes.
fishing. Yeah.
That's so cute. I have another one from a recent episode with comedian Jay Fluelling talking about things that meet the hype in Portland. And this was from June 3rd. I want to play a clip, though, just to remind listeners what we're talking about, because I couldn't even remember what this listener was referring to when I read this message.
Okay.
We have a clip from Alec Disney. The Disney? Is this explained to me?
Alex Disney, no relation, just
How?
a coincidence.
I'm sorry. That's like if your last name was Nabisco and then you wouldn't give us Cheez-Its.
So,
Which,
on that note
fair
from
point.
Claudia, referring to another comedian's name, Alex Disney, the listener, Meredith D., said, whoa, 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 Claudia. Now you've done it. Nabisco does not make Cheez-Its. They make Ritz locally. Oreos and Ritz are made in Portland on North Columbia, which I had no idea that was the case.
I know. I had that thought too. And then I remembered like, oh yeah, that is the place where they had like a big labor dispute a couple years ago. Do you remember this?
Oh, yeah.
Where all the Ritz workers went on strike?
You're right. I forgot about that. And like, you know what's funny, John? When I was getting ready for this episode yesterday, I have to admit I was eating some Ritz and I stopped for a second and I was like, do these taste better than other cities I've lived in when I've eaten Ritz before because of how close they are? They did taste pretty good, so something to think about next time you're shopping for snacks.
Yeah, totally. Well, I've got one more. Amy S. wrote in and wanted to share some good news with us. Amy S. said, urban forestry has come under a lot of heat from Willamette Week and from you guys, which, if you remember, we've been talking a lot about just how Portland's tree code doesn't make a lot of sense. There has been discussion about it was going to be changed. You know, like city council has said they wanted to take a look at it. Well, Amy says, take a look at this, and then linked us to a Portland government page that says, starting July 1st, most urban forestry tree permits will be eliminated or significantly reduced. So you still need a permit for this stuff, but it is now no fee associated with it for things like tree removal and replanting, street tree pruning with an inspection, and ornamental tree lighting permit application for street trees. Apparently you had to pay if you wanted to put ornamental lights on a street tree. That is no longer the case.
That's honestly some good news, John.
Yeah.
That's great. I will say, I love that every time something like this changes, you learn more about the things that were really shitty before it changed.
Yeah.
It's like, really? You had to pay for that?
Totally.
Every time.
Yeah.
Well, before we wrap up, I do have some shout outs from our CityCast Portland Neighbors, which is our membership program. I'd love to read you this first one from neighbor Jess B. They want to shout out the Jupiter Hotel in the Buckman neighborhood. They said it's unapologetically Portland and radically inclusive, turning up the volume on culture and community since way before it was cool.
Oh,
which is so sweet.
yeah. Well, this next one's from Jim T. They wanted to shout out the Fishwife restaurant. They said it's the finest restaurant on Lombard. It is simply a great seafood restaurant that has serious fine dining chops for a fair price. Not pretentious, just great food and the best oyster sandwich in Portland.
Yeah.
Giulia, I will say, I used to live in St. John's for many years. My partner has repeatedly said that she's mad at me that we didn't go to the Fishwife when we lived in St. John's. And I'm like, fair take. You're right. So I have to make good on that this summer.
Oh, you
Fishwife.
got a little oyster sandwich? Come on.
Yeah.
Okay, so this last one is from neighbor Mark M, and they want to shout out the Community Warehouse, which is a nonprofit furniture bank in Portland, Tigard, and Gresham. They said they're doing amazing work across Portland to turn around gently used furniture and household items to neighbors in need, and helping provide comfort and dignity to those overcoming adversity. Very sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to share your favorite local business or nonprofit on the pod, like these other neighbors, you need to become a CityCast Portland neighbor and send us your shout out. And we'll go ahead and read it right here on the pod. We'll put it in our newsletter. And you can join today at membership.citycast.fm. That's membership.citycast.fm.
Yeah. Well, Giulia, thanks for breaking this all down with me and for hanging out. Look forward to hanging out more on Sunday in Cully.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome. I'll bring the Zin, all right? I'll do my part to prevent forest fires. Sound good?
Oh, thank God. I didn't know what I was going to do the entire time, zinless at Parkways.
And don't go anywhere. In just a second, we've got a segment sponsored by Portland State University. Claudia is chatting with Stacey Hoshimiya about Invent Oregon's upcoming student competition.
I'm Claudia Meza here with Stacey Hoshimiya, the director of the Center for Entrepreneurship at Portland State University. You know, I've heard a lot about Invent Oregon. I know one of the taglines, Stacey, is helping students across Oregon turn big ideas into real-world solutions. Like, what's the pitch? Like, how would you explain what you do? Like, what is Invent Oregon?
First of all, thanks for having me here today. Big fan of the show, so I'm excited to be here and be able to talk to you about what Invent Oregon is. Basically, Invent Oregon is Oregon's only statewide collegiate invention competition.
Oh, wow.
The CE, or the Center for Entrepreneurship, we've been stewarding it for the last 9 years. So we're 9 years in with this. And basically what we do is we give access to entrepreneurial education because we believe this is transformative for students' lives. Because it's more than a competition that we do. It's actually a launchpad for the next generation of entrepreneurs and innovators to turn their ideas into actual impact.
So how long have you been working in Invent Oregon, like that program?
I came to Portland via Morocco, the country,
Oh, wow.
in May 2023 and came on as the assistant director at the Center for Entrepreneurship. And I walked right into boot camp, which is like the 3-day immersive design sprint that we do for the students right at the beginning of the program.
Gotcha.
So that was my entry point.
From the time you've been there, you know, you've seen 2 go through then, I suppose, 2 of these programs. Which was the coolest invention that's come out of your group?
I remember so many, you know, and they're all awesome inventions. Like, it's really impressive what these students are able to come up with. But like from my first year, 2023, what I remember the most is the automatic field tourniquet. And like, this was something that seems like it would be as ubiquitous as like the heart thing on the wall. What do you call
the defibrillator?
Yeah, the defibrillators on the wall.
Yeah.
But they envision like putting like AFT right next to it. And this is basically, you know, an automatic tourniquet because most people like do not know how to apply tourniquets
And they
properly.
bleed out.
And they
Yeah.
bleed out in like 5 minutes. And so that's not enough time for an actual, you know, first responders to get there. So this thing was going to like automatically tighten to the right compression, take vitals, and like basically save lives because it could do it right away because it would not lose people due to human error with like applying the tourniquet. So I thought that was awesome and
really
had
cool.
crazy application in the world.
Mm-hmm. What kind of support are students getting during the program, like to help these, you know, tourniquet machines come to life?
It starts with boot camp, which is like 3-day design sprint. And we bring in like facilitators and instructors that are like highly renowned in their fields. And they just basically get a chance to workshop their own ideas, right? And it's like 3 days immersive. We bring in alumni. They get to pitch for feedback. We have a big networking event. You know, we kind of do like this speed dating type of thing where we bring in people from our professional network. They get a chance to meet the cohort. The cohort gets a chance to meet them. And then like later on in the program, we match them with a mentor during the process, right? So it's like a way for them to actually like see if they vibe with the person before they're going to work with them. They get one-on-one guidance from someone like me or some of our staff to take them through the program. They all get a $2,000 prototyping grant to bring their idea to life. Yeah. They get access to all our tools and resources, like lots of networking opportunities. We pay for all their accommodations and meals and reimburse for their travel. And at the very end, it all culminates into a pitch competition and a prototype exhibition where they get to compete for $30,000 and cash prizes. So yeah, and those are unrestricted funds, so they can do whatever they want with them. Wow. You know, so it's really all about expanding access to underserved communities, like both rural and urban like areas throughout the state. It's about leveling the playing field. So this like opens up opportunity to anyone, no matter what your background or economic status is. And this is all thanks to our funders at Lemelson, Business Oregon, Roundhouse, and Ford Family Foundation. Like they're the ones that are helping us like really create this innovation pipeline and make an entrepreneurial ecosystem throughout the state.
Right. Well, this cohort, their big finals are coming up on June 27th, right? So what can folks expect? Can you give us, I mean, are you able to share a little bit like what's coming in? And, you know, and not only, I want to know just like, okay, here are a few highlights of what you might be seeing, but like, how can people get involved as well, you know?
So June 27th at University of Portland, right here local to St. John's, we're going to basically have this innovation showcase. We've got like 21 teams from 18 different schools this year. And they're going to do live pitches. There's going to be a prototype exhibition where you can get up and close with what they're doing and ask them questions. We'll have a keynote from one of our past winners, Jensen Barnes. She's going to talk about how Invent Oregon and like these kind of competitions have like influenced her own career path and journey. Then we're going to have awards and a reception at Javelina, local mixology bar. We're going to have like tacos from Beto's and also like live music from Hot Love and Jazz Babies. And all of this is free. And so we really want everybody to come out and support this next generation of innovators, lift them up, because like this is all about opening their eyes to all the possibilities of their lives, right?
Well, Stacey, thanks for being here. Again, check out that Eventbrite link in the show notes for free tickets. And to learn more, anyone who's interested in becoming a mentor and supporting the next generation of student innovators, check out the intake form in the show notes as well. Thanks again for listening. And Stacey, thanks for taking the time to break it down to us.
Yeah, thanks so much, Claudia.
Well, that's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you with Slims.